I'm going to call this meeting the Zoning and Planning Committee together. I am Council President Johnson, and I'm standing in for Councilmember Bender today. And I'm joined by Councilmember Warsami, members of the committee, Councilmember Goodman, and Councilmember Reich. We're a quorum of the Zoning and Planning Committee. So we have a number of items on our agenda today. The first item that I'm going to move approval of is our consent agenda. And so I'm going to move the consent agenda, which includes item 2, partial alley vacation on Harriet Avenue South, a rezoning on Harriet Avenue South, number 2 and 3, a number 4 local historic landmark designation, 2200 Park Avenue, and number 5, a referral to staff for an ordinance amending the code relating to the zoning code, revising minimum lot area requirements for two-family dwellings in the R2 and R2B zoning districts. So I will move that consent agenda. Is there anyone that wants to pull any of those items off before we vote? Seeing none, clerk can call the roll.
Councilmember Warsami. Aye. Goodman. Aye. Reich. Aye. B. Johnson.
Aye. I'm sorry. I have a statement about the consent agenda. Ma'am, those items do not require a public hearing, so we're not going to have the public speak, but you certainly can give your statement to the city clerk and it'll be a part of the public record. Thank you. That's fine. Thank you. Next item then is a public hearing on a site plan review for 2008 Bryant Avenue South. And we have a number of people signed up to speak. And so I will read names, we'll have a staff presentation, and then we'll go through our list of people that wish to speak about item 1.
Good morning, Council President Johnson, committee members. This project is an appeal for
your name. I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Your name.
Oh yes, my name is Mayling Smith, and I'm a representative of Community Planning and Economic Development.
All right, thank you so much.
The project before you is 2008 Bryant Avenue South. There's an appeal for this project that was approved at the City Planning Commission in March. The site is located near the intersection of Franklin and Hennepin. It's more closely at the intersection of Franklin and Bryant, and there are a number of single-story homes, but also low-rise apartment buildings on this block. The image at the top shows the property centered, and that would be that's a 2.5-story building with 3 dwelling units currently, and that would be demolished for the proposal. And the images on the bottom show you what's directly across the street. The zoning for this parcel is R6. This is our highest density residential district in the zoning code. And the entire block that the proposed development is on contains R6 zoning. And the site to the north is OR2, so that's the only exception to the R6 zoning. So this zoning district has been established to provide an environment of high-density apartments, congregate living arrangements, and cluster developments with lots of 5,000 square feet or more. It also allows institutions as well. The max height in this district is 6 stories or 84 feet. So the proposed development would contain a total of 10 dwelling units. Each level of the building would contain 2 dwelling units, and that includes the basement. So these are just some floor plans in case we need to reference them. There's also a rooftop deck that is proposed. The primary exterior materials would be stucco, cementitious lap siding, and stained cedar. The only application that is triggered for this project is site plan review. This is required for applications with 5 or more dwelling units, and a public hearing for this type of development is triggered when there are at least 10 dwelling units. And so the site plan review application was approved on the consent agenda by the City Planning Commission on March 28th. There were 4 interrelated items that required alternative compliance, as you will find in the staff report. When there is alternative compliance for one of the site plan review standards, there are 3 ways that this can be, that staff and the City Planning Commission can grant alternative compliance. And so the first is by including amenities or improvements that address the adverse effects of not complying with site plan review. The second way would be finding that strict adherence to the standards in site plan review would be impractical because of the site location or existing conditions. And then the third is that the proposed alternative is consistent with development plans and policies adopted by the City Council. So to summarize what required alternative compliance for this project, there is a 6-foot screen provided between the parking area that contains 2 surface parking stalls and the residential property to the north. This is not fully met along the south parking lot frontage. So the only area that is not providing the full 6-foot screen is this driveway area. A 10-foot driveway is required in the zoning code. So if they go below that, then they are required to have a variance. In addition, moving anything in this direction would trigger a variance for the maneuvering area, which is currently 22 feet. So the City Planning Commission did grant alternative compliance for not providing screening for the 8.5 feet that is the driveway. The rest of that frontage is screened by the proposed trash enclosure. There also was alternative compliance required for not having a landscaped yard with the required trees and shrubs along the south parking lot frontage for the exact same reason. And then there were not enough shrubs within the north parking lot frontage, and the City Planning Commission did not grant alternative compliance for that. And so the applicant will have to comply with the 2 shrub minimum. Here's an overview of their site plan. So as you can see, there is access from Bryant Avenue south. There's no alley. There's a shared driveway with the property to the south, and there's an easement in place for that access. And this just summarizes kind of the site constraints that limit the ability of the applicant to provide the full screening and landscape buffer for the south parking lot frontage. A buffer is not required for the entire building length. It's only required for the 28.5 feet that is between the parking area and the areas to the north and south. And here is a rendering of the proposed project. So that's just a summary of what the application was. If you have any questions, I'm here to help answer any questions, and the applicant is also here to speak.
Anyone have any questions for Ms. Smith? Seeing none, would the applicant care to speak?
Hi, my name is Michael Stoddard. I'm with DJR Architecture.
I'm sorry, I missed your last name, sir.
Michael Stoddard.
Stoddard. Okay, thank you. All right.
And I'm Danny Perkins, one of the owners.
Okay. All right.
I think to continue on with Mei-Ling's presentation, we can talk about the garbage and recycling storage. That was one of the bullet points on the appeal. The required amount of recycling area is 22 square feet, and we've provided 28 square feet, and that same amount for garbage storage as well. Okay. Additionally, regarding the landscape buffer to the south, the southern property where the garbage and recycling storage area is, that section to the south is a four-car garage. So there's sort of a natural buffer there in place as it is. Okay, sorry. I'll speak closer into the mic, sorry. Danny, do you have anything to add?
If you guys have any specific questions about the project, I'm here to answer them. But Mei-Ling and Michael have done a great job of summarizing what the project is and how it fits within the zoning law.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone have any questions for the owner or the architect? Seeing none. Is there a representative for the appellant then? Care to speak? Representative for what? The appellant. Appealing. For the appeal. I'm sorry. Representative for the appeal. Yes. All right. Okay. No. Okay. Councilmember Goodman is helping me with this. So. Okay. All right. I'm going to open the public hearing, and we'll have a representative from the appellant. Sir, identify yourself, and we will listen, and then we've got a list of people that care to speak. And so once we get through the presentation, then I'll call people up individually to speak.
Thank you. My name is Jim Boyle, and I live at 2624 Bryant Avenue South, and with additional concerned neighbors have formed as Minneapolis Neighbors United to appeal all final actions taken by the Minneapolis City Planning Commission on the 28th of March, approving the land use application by DDMZ Real Estate, the site plan review by City Planner Mei-Ling Smith, and the process by which the Minneapolis City Planning Commission reached its decision for the 2008 Bryant Avenue apartments. So what is Minneapolis Neighbors United? We're a group of concerned citizens who believe in smart growth, not market-driven or unaffordable development for Minneapolis and our neighborhoods. Right now, Minneapolis has a market-driven development plan to increase the tax base rather than intelligent, creative, and sustainable development. We want Minneapolis to be like many communities of all sizes across the country that are using creative strategies to develop in ways that preserve neighborhoods and critical environmental areas, protect water and air quality, and reuse already developed land and structures. It conserves resources by reinvesting in existing infrastructure and rehabilitating or preserving historic buildings. It designs integrated and diverse neighborhoods that have homes near shops, office, schools, houses of worship, parks, and other amenities, giving residents and visitors the option of walking, bicycling, taking public transportation, or driving. It provides a range of different housing types to make it possible for families and individuals of all stages and income categories to find safe, attractive housing they can afford, for senior citizens to age in place, and for young people to afford their first home. And it enhances neighborhoods by involving residents in development decisions, creating vibrant places to live, work, and play. From 1963 to 1975, 100+ houses in the wedge were torn down or bulldozed for apartment buildings. From 1975 to 2015, 0 houses were, and since 2015, 8 houses have been bulldozed. 2008 Bryant would be the 9th. 6 of these 8 are owned by realtors Drew Levin and Danny Perkins. They also own 2008 Bryant and operate under an array of no less than 5 LLCs. They own 26 properties in Lowry Hill East, dozens more in the city of Minneapolis, and seem to receive carte blanche for development from the city, ignoring planning and zoning restrictions that would not be tolerated in more affluent neighborhoods in the city with a high density of owner-occupied properties. This was the case in the development of the 4-story apartment building at 2743 DuPont, which illegally blocks the solar panels of the house across the street. When the owners of this house complained to city officials, they were ignored. The properties they buy seem to never have a for sale sign or an MLS listing, which for realtors is illegal. Often neighbors don't know that these properties are slated to be bulldozed until the utility companies come to cut the service. Minneapolis Neighbors United is currently in conversation with the Minnesota Department of Commerce and the community banks that finance these developments to make sure banks know of the impending commercial real estate bubble they are financing, as these high rent units sit empty, as in the case of the Motive Apartments at 25th and Colfax, which is 90% vacant. You will notice that we have chosen a bulldozer as a symbol we use on our Facebook page and flyers. We believe that our neighborhoods are being bulldozed both literally and metaphorically. In the 10th ward, we've had 8 properties bulldozed since 2015, and more are scheduled. We are also being bulldozed by the actions of the Minneapolis City Planning Commission, and that's why we are appealing the Planning Commission's decision for 2008 Bryant. The Minneapolis City Planning Commission erred in adopting the staff findings for the application by Michael Stoddard on behalf of DDMZ Real Estate and the site plan review for the 2008 Bryan Avenue apartments. By approving the site plan review for the 2008 Bryan Avenue apartments, the CPC's decision will be injurious to the use and enjoyment of adjacent properties and overall neighborhood livability. In addition, this approval will cause other decisions by the CPC to appear suspect due to the decision-making process used for this application. This appeal is based on the following facts. The plan is inadequate and impractical for garbage and recycling storage and removal and snow removal. The neighbors to the south at 2012 Bryant Avenue will suffer injury to the use and enjoyment of their property as there is no landscape buffer at the south lot line and plans include a rooftop deck. Incorrect information exists in the site plan review regarding the Uptown Small Area Plan, Historic Preservation, and the Minneapolis City and Metropolitan Council comprehensive plans. The site plan review is incomplete as the methods of alternative compliance are not provided and relevant public comment was not included. The process leading to the decision by the CPC was incomplete. First, garbage and recycling storage and removal and snow removal. Garbage and recycling storage and removal, current practice is one garbage bin and one recycling bin per unit. The site plan indicates the use of 4 plastic bins for garbage and 4 bins for recycling for a 10-unit commercial building. Every triplex on the same street has 3 bins for garbage and 3 bins for recycling. That's the standard of 1 each per unit. 10 units should require a total of 20 bins. There is no place for 20 bins or even 10 bins. The site plan shows an 8-foot by 4.5-foot single waste collection point right up next to the sidewalk. This does not address the waste management needs of a 10-unit building. The necessity for someone to drag trash bins to the curb and then drag them back is not a practice allowed for any other modern multi-unit building in the neighborhood. In addition, the city of Minneapolis does not usually offer garbage and recycling collection contracts for commercial buildings of more than 4 residential units. This is a 10-unit commercial building. Therefore, the owners would need to have a contract with an outside company that will normally require dumpsters, not individual bins. This would require 2 dumpsters. Although necessary, there is not enough space for 2 dumpsters. And if the owners must have dumpsters, that would necessitate a wider driveway to allow trash and recycling collection. This is a shared driveway. The wear and tear of garbage trucks on residential driveways is well known in Minneapolis and is one of the reasons the practice was discontinued several years ago. The owners of the single-family home at 2012 Bryant should not be held responsible for the wear of increased traffic on their driveway by garbage, recycling, delivery, service, and moving trucks servicing 2008 Bryant. The site plan states service vehicles are not expected to access the site. This is absurd and totally unrealistic for a 10-unit building in a neighborhood with crowded streets, high rental turnover, an abundance of moving and delivery trucks, and nowhere to put them, blocking the streets, alleyways, and emergency responders. The location of garbage and recycling bins or dumpsters is also problematic, not to mention an eyesore, as it is placed on the south property line shared with 2012 Bryant Avenue South. Snow removal. The site plan shows a flat roof and rooftop deck from which snow will need to be removed for load purposes. There is also a 2-vehicle parking lot in the back and a shared driveway. The snow removal plan of piling the snow into one of the 2 parking spaces is not feasible. It must be fully removed from the property. It also must not impede the use of the driveway or become the responsibility of the owners of 2012 Bryant Avenue South. Second, landscape buffer and rooftop deck. There is no landscape buffer at the south lot line. The residents of 2012 will have no screening from the commercial property to the north. A rooftop deck is unnecessary to the plans and would interfere with the enjoyment of the property for the residents of 2012 Bryant Avenue South. Noise will be an issue along with other practices that come from non-family oriented rental units. Third, Uptown Small Area Plan and Historic Preservation. The Uptown Small Area Plan was used incorrectly as a reference in this site plan. The Uptown Small Area Plan does not provide specific land use guidelines for this parcel because it is not within the purview of the Uptown Small Area Plan. You can see this in document A. Although next to the Hennepin Commercial Corridor building and next to the Franklin Community Corridor building, it is not within either category. It is a residential multi-unit property in the neighborhood and not within the Uptown Small Area Plan. Historic preservation. The site plan states not applicable. This site is neither historically designated nor is it located in a historic district. This statement distorts the fact that little research was done on the property. Although demolition is not part of the City Planning Commission's review, this statement does affect the decision to demolish a historic structure and allow a new structure to be built on the land. Blanket categorization of all properties not already historically designated or not already located in a historic district as not falling under historic preservation deters research into our history and disallows the formation of new historic designations and historic districts. It allows indiscriminate destruction of our city's cultural and architectural history. Local residents are able to look up the history of the buildings in this neighborhood, but CPED does not seem to have that inclination. You can see that history in document B of the appeal. Comprehensive plans. The city comprehensive plan at the Metropolitan Council plan place a priority on affordable housing and mixing of income levels in neighborhoods. The continued removal of affordable housing in the Lowry Hill East neighborhood and the systematic replacement of that affordable housing with a few market rate, but mainly above market rate or luxury housing goes completely against both plans. Eradication of affordable housing is the opposite of our city's stated goals and plans, even if in practice it is being done indiscriminately. 4, incomplete site plan review. Although alternative compliance is referenced for landscaping and screening of the property, no methods of alternative compliance are provided. The neighbors to the south, west, and north do not know how these issues will be addressed. Public comment. 3 letters were received prior to the hearing on March 28, 2016. 2 of these, the most important 2, were not provided to the Planning Commission. The comments with the most relevance to the development from Matthew Paymar and Dr. Meredith Gill, the owners of 2012 Bryant Avenue, on the south property line and sharing the driveway, were not included in the staff documents. Also, the letter from Alicia Gibson, JD and PhD, the new owner of the property directly across the street, was not included, although in an email from planning staff, she was assured that it would be. You can see these letters in document C13 of the appeal. 5, incomplete process. The process leading up to the CPC decision to approve the process was incomplete. The Minneapolis City Planning Commission based its decision on a site plan that was inadequate, impractical, incorrect, and incomplete. The developers have not appeared at the Lowry Hill East Neighborhood Association Zoning and Planning Committee, which is one of the smart growth strategies I mentioned earlier for resident input, and thus no official comment has come from the association. The neighbors on the south property line at 2012 spoke with the city planner, Mailing Smith, but their correspondence was not given to the CPC commissioners after the decision when they asked if there were any other options for opposing this development that will decrease the quality of their life in their home and their property value. Ms. Smith told them they could file an appeal, but that she wouldn't recommend it because it is unlikely they would win and it would be expensive. Another letter from the new owner of the property across the street was also not provided to the commissioners. The CPC never reviewed or discussed the land use application and the site plan review for 2008 Bryan Apartments at the City Planning Commission, Committee of the Whole, or at the CPC meeting on March 28th. The published agenda for the CPC March 28th meeting showed the 2008 Bryant development as the 3rd item on the agenda. Residents that planned to speak against the proposal timed their entrance to the meeting accordingly. However, in reviewing the video of that meeting, the following occurred. At 2.16 minutes into the meeting, item 3, 2008 Bryant, was moved to the consent agenda. At 2.17 minutes, the chair asked if anyone present wished to speak, including staff, regarding item 3, and as no one was present or chose to speak, 3 minutes into the meeting, item 3 was approved via the consent agenda. Soon after, when those who planned to speak arrived, a notice had been posted on the door that item 3 had already been approved. The privilege of a public hearing had been denied, and those who wished to speak against this project lost their opportunity. Conclusion, a site plan review is required for the development of a new multiple family residential structure. The site plan should be thorough, complete, and correct. The 2008 Bryan Avenue apartment site plan review is none of these things, and thus provided flawed data by which a decision should not have been made. Thereby, the process by which the Minneapolis City Planning Commission reached its decision was based on flawed data that was not thorough, was not complete, and was not correct. This project sets a dangerous precedent for the residents in our neighborhoods. This project does not fit the historic character of the neighborhood and does not take its neighbors into consideration. We request that this appeal be upheld and, in addition, that a thorough historical review of 2008 Bryant Avenue South be conducted by the Heritage Preservation Committee, not an in-house and incomplete review by a CPED planner. We would also request that any house slated for demolition of over 100 years have the same review. We believe there's an implicit contract between Minneapolis residents and the city officials and staff who are paid by our taxes that we will have a voice in the development of our neighborhoods. Yet there's a growing discontent among residents that their voices aren't heard, and the city staff and elected officials don't want to hear what they have to say. By filing this appeal, many residents contributed hard-earned dollars in addition to their tax dollars that support the city to make their voices heard. It shouldn't be this way. We believe we have demonstrated in this appeal that the Minneapolis City Planning Commission based its decision on a site plan that was inadequate, impractical, incorrect, and incomplete, based on flawed information. We urge you to approve the appeal. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Boyle?
Thank you.
Seeing none, I'm going to call on the people that have signed in to speak at the public hearing. And I'm going to call 2 names so that people can be ready to speak after the first person speaks. And I'm going to ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes. We've got a timer, so we will try and get through this list. First, I have Janet Dre, and then Sara Lynn Romanit, and I'm probably messing with your name. So Janet Dre, and then Sara Lynn, please come up. Ms. Dre, would you please give your name and address then too?
You want an address, you said?
Yes, please.
It's Janet Dre, 2741 Colfax. I am here in support of the appeal on 2008 Bryant. I have been a resident of Lowry Hill for 22 years. I am most disturbed by what will be the loss of yet another home in our neighborhood and by the lack of input allowed from residents. I'll reference the overhead I have up. This is, it's hard to read, but you can see the ownership by the LLC, and these are all homes in our neighborhood, and the list shows now 7 that have been demoed so far. So I'm most disturbed by what will be the loss of another home in our neighborhood and by the lack of input allowed from residents. Those most directly affected by the demo and new development will be next door neighbors, but we are all affected when precious resources are destroyed. It's wasteful. Due to time limitations, I'll focus on 2 issues. First, garbage, recycling, and composting for the site, and then the rooftop terrace. As I understand, the property currently has 3 rental units. The proposed has 10. Minneapolis ordinance requires a minimum of 20 containers, 10 for garbage, 10 for recycling. If only half the units opt for composting, that's an additional 5 containers. There's no alley access, so garbage pickup will be from Bryant. What happens on garbage day when 25 containers are at the curb, or on the sidewalk, or in the street? And what happens in winter? The Elan development used DuPont Avenue to stage garbage and recycling removal for almost a year. Only when neighbors brought this practice to the attention of the city, month after month, did it stop. Why not avoid this by proper planning during the site development process? Is that not part of Minneapolis Planning Commission responsibility? Second issue is the rooftop terrace. This feature seems to show a lack of consideration for the single-family home directly to the south and to surrounding neighbors. Rooftop terrace that allows groups of more than 5 or 6 people has potential to compound noise levels. Noise levels are already very high at the Hennepin-Franklin hub, especially with Liquor Lyles as a neighbor. Smaller
Ms. Drake,
balconies,
can you wrap up,
I have
please?
just another,
All right.
small balconies for each unit would be more appropriate. Unless the terrace at the north edge limits occupancy to 8 to 10, has appropriate sound buffers for noise abatement, should not have been allowed. Once again, appropriate planning. Thank you.
Sara Lynn and then Audrey Johnson. Would you give your address, please?
My name is Sara Lynn Romanit. I'm a resident of Lowry Hill East at 2111 Aldridge and live one short block from the proposed Bryant Avenue apartments. I support the appeal filed by Minneapolis Neighbors United. The site plan application for this project should not be approved. There are many reasons to deny the site plan application, but today I would like to discuss process, particularly agendas and consent agendas. It is appalling the way CPED, the City Planning Commission, the Zoning and Planning Committee, and the City Council are pushing through teardowns and developments with no apparent concern for the welfare of the neighborhoods. The way agendas are manipulated at city meetings are truly unhealthy manifestation of this callousness. Agenda roulette, a reckless and thoughtless game played on constituents at city meetings. The misuse of consent agendas and the seemingly random and pointless rotation of agenda items cause much needless confusion and distress. In the past year, I have had to demand a public hearing and the removal of a consent agenda item. At the Planning Commission on March 28th, the Bryant Avenue apartments were placed, not posted, on the consent agenda and passed within the first 4 minutes of the meeting. My neighbor arrived to speak and was met with a note placed on the door stating that item 3 had already passed. They walked away denied. Even today on the posted agenda, the consent agenda listed several items for 29th and Harriet and Grant, BZZ 7587, which, by the way, is a site plan application that I will go on the record and say I do not support, once again denying residents a public hearing. Changed or no, how many are not here because they were told their opinion means nothing? This is wrong and it has to stop. No more agenda roulette. You're gambling with your constituents' lives and their rights. Vote to uphold this appeal and stop playing games with the public. Thank you.
Audrey Johnson and then Bill Newman.
Good morning. My name is Audrey Johnson. I'm a resident of Lowry Hill East. I live at 2525 DuPont Avenue South. And as a former member of the school board and the planning commission, I speak in support of the appeal under consideration. Minneapolis has a shortage of affordable housing. This is one of the most segregated cities in this country. We also have one of the worst achievement gaps as well. Many studies illustrate it all goes hand in hand. Residential segregation and the lack of affordable housing continues racial inequality and keeps the achievement gap at a level that is unacceptable. It is shameful that our city is so segregated. It is classic institutionalized racism in housing policy. One scholar, Richard Rothstein, author of the report, The Making of Ferguson, and a research associate of the Economic Policy Institute, maintains that in many cities, segregation is largely government-sponsored, and it would appear that it is so in this city as well. Because housing decisions in my neighborhood are being made not with disenfranchised children in mind, but with what the market will bear. The current course of events continues the status quo. The council is allowing the destruction of affordable, historic housing in my neighborhood to make way for cheaply constructed mid and high-end housing, effectively keeping our neighborhood racially segregated and benefiting developers. Raising 8 homes in such a small area over 14 months is alarming enough. But building Bender boxes, which our neighborhood has become to call them, destroying affordable housing, replacing it with white housing in a white part of town, keeps housing segregation alive and well. And we don't need any more of that. It is time to expose the hypocrisy in this housing practice. Actions speak much louder than words. And if you deny this appeal, you continue the status quo. Residential segregation remains firmly entrenched. The achievement gap stays firmly in place. Benderification, as we call it, gets shoved down our throats. We are wedged in with no regard for neighborhood, racial isolation, the achievement gap, the environment, or other issues like parking and livability for the residents of Lowry Hill East. I urge you to uphold this appeal. Thank you.
Bill Newman, followed by Joe Knably. Is Bill Newman here? Oh, thank you.
Hi, I support the appeal and would like to talk about more responsible development in our neighborhood. It is said the new urbanism was born in Seaside, Florida. This was based on a walkable, less car traffic model and varied housing types, not unlike what we have in the Wedge. One major difference is that Seaside had very strict design guidelines for all its housing types, which made for a much more successful and pleasant neighborhood. The presented plans were adhered to and the appropriate scale of building was kept. With the motif development at 2316 Colfax, developers presented and requested a variance to allow open porches on the Colfax side to at least repeat the rhythm of scale of the other front porches of the existing housing. I thought this is an appropriate gesture and at least lessen some of the sting from the very contentious tear down of the Orth House. When motif was built, there were no porches. When I asked my elected official why what the developer presented was not carried out, I was laughed at and told that she had no control over what was actually built. I think it's only fair to expect what's presented. The same developer was doing 2008 Bryant, put a horrendously out of scale building on a single lot at 2749 DuPont.
Yeah, thank you.
Is market rate hence not affordable to most renters and is an eyesore that could adversely affect the surrounding property, which is significant seeing how property is the greatest and most relied upon asset for most middle-class folks. So it's not favorable to renters or homeowners. It seems to only favor the developer who plunked down the cheapest construction and is reaping maximum rents. There is a compromise for more density on these single lots. It only takes a bit more creativity. I've been fortunate enough to have traveled extensively and seen how desirable neighborhoods in world cities have held to strict and appropriate guidelines to maintain the integrity of the area, which is, after all, what makes the area desirable and draws people to it. When something larger is put in, it is almost always architecturally stunning. While these strategies may cost a bit more, I do not feel it's the city or the neighborhood's responsibility to improve the developer's bottom line. The area is in demand, so if pushed, developers can and would put in better quality and scale buildings. Here are some photos taken in the Wedge and Echo neighborhood. One has been on the building for over 40 years. The front is maintained, so it keeps the character of the block intact, but a large addition is put on the back of the house. It can be made very energy efficient and redesigned. With the addition on the back, it could easily create a sixplex, better than nearly fourplex on DuPont. I don't think the overall cost would be much higher than new construction. What it would do is keep the streetscape intact and be much less in the landfill. Both doable goals, especially for a city that wants zero waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Knably, followed by Leo Whiteside. Mr. Knably, please give your address.
My name is Joe Knably. I live at 2533 Colfax Avenue South. And I support the appeal filed by Jim Boyle. As a strong supporter of green building and smart growth movements, I would like to point out how the proposal to demolish 2008 Bryant does not adhere to several of the core tenets of smart growth, nor does this tear-down mentality protect the environment. The Environmental Protection Agency's definition of smart growth is: smart growth covers a range of development and conservation strategies that help protect our health and natural environment and make our communities more attractive, economically stronger, and more socially diverse. First, as supported by recent studies, rehabbing of sound existing structures using proven green building strategies is a much more effective way to protect the environment than tearing down existing structures and replacing them with buildings that lack the implementation of substantial green building practices. In looking at the plans for the proposed building at 2008 Bryant, I failed to find any green strategies incorporated into the project to justify the wasting of the embedded energy already in 2008 by depositing it in a lock, stock, and barrel into the landfill. Second, one core tenet of smart growth is creating a range of housing opportunities and choices that result in attracting diverse groups of people. Diverse communities are smart, healthy communities. The current tear-down model being used in Lowry Hill East is based on attracting one demographic of the population, young urban professionals.
Can you wrap up, Mr. Knavely, please?
Pardon me?
Can you wrap up?
Yes. Tearing down diverse sounding structures, existing structures, and replacing them with one type of housing is not smart growth. It is a tunnel vision strategy based on density and profit. Rather than being a method to create strong neighborhoods and communities, it is a way to ensure future stratification of wealth in one age group in Lowry Hill East. Thank you.
Next, Leo Whiteside, and then followed by Bernadette Knavely. Mr. Whiteside, I apologize if I...
Hi there. My name is Leo Whitebird. I am at 2825 Harriet Avenue South. I'm here to support my fellow members of MRRDC and Neighborhoods United in support of this appeal. This project is emblematic of the city's love affair with developers and headlong rush into irresponsible development. Once again, we're seeing the voices of neighborhood groups being shut out. It just keeps happening. It's happening down our block. The item that's not going to get this is going to be on the consent agenda later. It's another example of something that got railroaded. The residents got railroaded. We were not given time to react to it. I salute the Neighborhoods United for being as together as they are in this appeal, and we share many of their concerns. And I think it's time for the city to really reevaluate its development policies, because the citizens are getting screwed. And I guess that's all I have to say. I would ask in closing that you please consider removing the items on 29th and Harriet from the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitebird. Bernadette Knavely, followed by Constance Pepin. Ms. Knavely?
Yes. Hi, my name is Bernadette Knavely. I live at 2741 Bryant Avenue South. I do support the appeal filed by Jim Boyle, and I would like to specifically speak to the lack of landscape buffer on the south lot line in this plan from the point of view of it as an environmentalist. Not only is the buffer absent, but the plan shows a complete disregard for the importance of green space in this neighborhood. I noted in the plan a totality of 2 shrubs. I cannot stress enough the importance of maintaining and enhancing a healthy urban ecosystem. Human needs for greenery, quiet, and fresh air dovetail with the necessary vegetation to provide food, protection, and nesting sites for the wildlife in our neighborhood. I am talking about places for worms and mushrooms and robins and pollinators, trees, grasses, insects, fruits, birds, and humans. Green space is an essential element of a high quality of life in a community. We in this neighborhood have a right to demand inclusion of green space in all real estate developments. Even small tracts of green space are essential to preserve. They are not negligible. They are not expendable. I really would like to see the city of Minneapolis take a lead and actually implement considerations that specifically address the inclusion of significant green space in developments in our neighborhood and citywide in every project. Thank you.
Thank you. Constance Pepin, and then Paul Ryan. Ms. Pepin?
4031 Zenith Avenue South. I'm here to support the appeal. Approval of this project is will be yet another example of how you are allowing and even enabling developers to profit at the expense of residents and neighborhoods and livability in our city. For example, the staff report says it would be impractical to manage stormwater on the site. Hence, the city approves dumping all the stormwater into the street. If there isn't already a state law against allowing this increase in runoff and pollution, it's still wrong for the city to condone dumping stormwater into the street. It's just wrong. The footprint of the building should be smaller to allow for stormwater management on the site. Another example is parking. Just passing the parking problem that you created onto the neighborhood. Your body has changed the law to allow this ridiculously inadequate parking, yet you are still responsible for the problems that the developer is passing onto the neighborhood in the form of congestion, illegal parking, traffic, and emissions. Other people have talked about the garbage problem, the lack of screening, the environmental concerns. These are just another example of how part of the problem that the city council is functioning as an autocracy and basically arrogantly saying, you know better than all of us combined, and you're just going to destroy all of our neighborhoods, defund our neighborhood organizations, and sit there texting while I'm testifying, which is really, you know, people paid hundreds of dollars to come here today and be heard. And the only only significant eye contact I've seen is from one individual here, while most of the time there's been side conversations and texting going on and almost a blatant disregard for what people are saying. And I think it's really wrong for elected officials to act this way, especially after we've gone through the appeal process.
Stick to the topic of the public hearing.
Okay, it was hard to come today. It was hard to come knowing today that you will rubber stamp this proposal, knowing that the motion to deny the appeal has already been written, and you've probably even planned in advance who will make that motion to deny this appeal. As I mentioned, it's really disrespectful to your constituents as an elected body not to be listening to us, to really put aside your phones and your texting and to listen to us. And at a minimum, you owe some discussion after the testimony ends rather than just this motion going through like it has on many occasions.
Can you wrap up, please, Ms. Piven?
Yes, I will. Please start listening to your constituents and value their voices as much as you value developers' money. Grant the appeal and send this proposal back to the developers rather than letting them dump stormwater, traffic problems, and other problems on residents while developers profit at the expense of the people who pay the taxes here. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Ryan followed. You know, I think I have people signed up for the last item on the agenda. Okay, so I'm going to kind of look at addresses and then I'll go back. Paul Ryan, and then I'm looking at Chris Martenson after that. Mr. Ryan.
Paul Ryan, I live at 1934 Aldrich Avenue South, so just about a block away from this proposed development, and I support the appeal largely from an affordability standpoint, but also from the inadequate parking. 2 parking spaces for 10 units is ridiculous. From an affordability standpoint, we're moving more affordable housing out of the neighborhood, and I think that's something we really need to look at. We're looking at it as a city, affordable housing, if it really is important citywide. This is a specific instance in a specific neighborhood where we can help keep affordable housing in the neighborhood. And I really support the appeal and support looking at ways of keeping structures that are already there, maintaining in the neighborhood, and those structures that are already there, the structure that's there has the affordable housing, the new ones do not. So in conclusion, I support the appeal and encourage the city to really look at affordable housing and not just speak about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Chris Martenson, followed by Cynthia Wong.
My name is Chris Martenson, and I reside at 2930 Harriet. I support the appeal for 2008 Bryant because I believe the city of Minneapolis needs to incorporate the rationale of residents into any zoning changes that are implemented by the city's comprehensive plan. In our neighborhood, we are experiencing a similar situation. I represent a large group of people in my neighborhood. We contacted Lisa Bender, Barb Johnson, and Lisa Steiner this week to request that BZZ 7587, the 2905 Harriet Avenue development, be taken off the consent agenda today. We have come across a matter of grave concern that was revealed outside of the 10-day appeal period. We have reason to believe that...
Ms. Martenson, are you talking about...
I am speaking to the appeal in relationship to our experiences.
Okay, please.
And this relates to the appeal.
Subject, if you would,
we have reason to believe
2008 Bryant.
We have reason to believe that state statute 473.859 is legally protecting collusion between entities of the city of Minneapolis, council members, and developers. State statute 473.859 abdicates the representation of city council members to their constituents. Minneapolis only holds hearings like the one we are at today because they are required by state statute 462.357. This statute does not require that the city address the disagreements